chances are if you are watching this, then you have a student that is in high school or pretty much in the thick of things when it comes to applying to scholarships. And so in today's video, I want to break down the different types of scholarships that are available so that you and your student can tackle all of them. Because really what we want to do is make sure that we're utilizing every option available. And believe it or not, there's tons of different places we can get scholarships from. Now, make sure you hit subscribe because every single week we release a new strategy on how to help your student work towards a debt-free degree. Hey there, my name is Jocelyn Pearson, founder of the Scholarship System, where this is what we do. We redefine paying for college to help families build strong financial futures rather than ones buried in debt. And our main way of doing so is by helping families secure scholarships. In fact, we just did our most recent tally and we have now surpassed $12 million in scholarship wins. So we have seen a lot of applications, we have seen a lot of wins, and we have seen that it doesn't matter what your family situation is, there's money out there for pretty much everyone. Now, I will say though that our bread and butter is focused on US citizens or permanent residents, so just a note. So what are scholarships? You might be hearing this word a lot, but you're really not sure what exactly that means. So scholarships are a type of financial aid where they help pay for college and they do not have to be paid back. So it is basically using other people's money to pay for a college degree. They can go towards tuition, room and board, fees, books. I broke my laptop in college and needed a new one. I was able to use scholarship money for that. So they can be used for a wide variety of expenses. Now, they also can vary in dollar amounts. They can vary in eligibility requirements, payment installations. For example, sometimes they'll be a one-time payment, sometimes they'll be for 4 years. So really, every scholarship that I ever received looked different from the other. None of them were exactly the same. Now, I did mention that this money does not have to be paid back. However, there are certain instances where a student can actually lose scholarship dollars that they've received. So we have an entire YouTube video on how to lose scholarships, or I should say how to avoid losing them. So you can check that out. We'll link to it in the bio. You can also see it somewhere here on the screen. Now, before I get into the different types, let's talk about why these are important. So of course, anytime that we can pay for college without using our own money or without using student debt is the best, right? And this is actually how I got my college paid for. I got over $126,000 in scholarships. Now at that time, that was not only enough to pay for my degree, but I actually got overage checks every semester. So an overage check is where you receive more scholarship dollars than what the bill is, and the university cuts a check for whatever is remaining each semester. So this was a great situation to be in. But the reason that I did this was because my parents were in what we call the income gap, where we made too much money to get a free ride and yet nowhere near enough to where they could just cut a check to pay for college. And I think a lot of families get stuck in that gap these days. And so scholarships are the way that normal families can still go to college without burying their students in debt. And I want to say that I wasn't one of those students who just got this free ride from the university where they were like, "Ooh, look at you, here you go." No. In fact, my university, I think they only offered me like $2,000 or $4,000 a year. So I had to get scrappy. I had to get savvy. I had to work my way up to my free ride. And I like to call this the average student's way of paying for college. So if your student can win those $200,000 scholarships, that's amazing. We have tons of tips on how to do it. Go for it. But for most people, most of their students, we're going to have to get a little bit creative. Now, I do have a free training where I walk you through my 6 steps to securing scholarships. I also show you exactly where to find these legitimate scholarships that have less competition. So if you want to check that out, you can go to thescholarshipsystem.com/free training, or you can click on the button somewhere here on the screen. Also, all the resources will be linked in the description. But that said, if we're getting creative, that means we need to know all the different types. So let's get into those. So first, I'm going to categorize the types into 2 different main categories. First is private. So this is given by individual organizations. These can be businesses, civics groups, nonprofits, banks, lawyers' offices, doctors' offices, you name it. Local PTAs, PTSAs, so many different organizations, but they're outside of the institutions. The other alternative category is institutional. Now, this is not you have to go for one or the other. We want to go for both. But institutional, these are given typically by the university and typically for things like leadership or grades, merit-based, right? Athletic scholarships. Now, for institutional scholarships, many students, they're considered for these right when they apply to college. So along with their admissions application, they might automatically be considered, or the college may require students to submit a separate application. So we always want to confirm that we have done what we need to do to be considered for these. There may also be money for later years in college beyond that freshman year amount that they receive. But no matter what, they're through the institution. Now, the other thing about institutional scholarships is in order to be eligible or in order to even be considered for these, your family has to submit FAFSA. Okay, so even if you don't receive anything through the government, even if you make a moderate income level, most universities will require FAFSA so that they can use that same data as a way to decide what to give your student. Now, if you're curious about FAFSA, I have an entire playlist, so you can check that out. Again, we'll link to it in the description, so make sure you check that out after this. Now, those are the two broad categories, but within those we have, I mentioned briefly, merit-based, then we have need-based, and we have athletic scholarships. So let's go into those. So I mentioned merit. This is based on competitiveness. This is where a lot of families say, well, my student doesn't have a perfect GPA or they're not a great all-star athlete. And these merit scholarships, they do require that. They do require high SAT or ACT test scores or a student to have a ton of community service. So these are the competitive ones. And if your student can go for these, then fantastic. They can often knock off a huge amount from the college bill. But the good news is that it's not the only kind that are out there. But the thing is, I do want to say that even if it's a merit-based scholarship, that doesn't mean that your student has to have a 4.0 in order to get money. I've found hundreds of merit-based scholarships through universities that require a 3.0, a 3.2. I've even seen a 2.8. So if your student is open to different institutions, not that they have to go there, but let's see if we get in, see what they offer us. It may actually result in some funding, even if your student is nowhere near a 4.0 student. Now, secondly, are need-based, and this is the other category that most families assume everyone falls into, but that's not the case. But that said, need-based scholarships are based on your family's financial situation. Again, this relies on those FAFSA results often. But we have a little exception to the need-based requirements. So if you want to learn that tip, you want to make sure that you register for that free training I mentioned. Okay, and the third one is athletic scholarships. So these are actually far and few between. It's funny because families groom students to get athletic scholarships, and yet less than 2% of student athletes actually get them. So if I was to push families with young children to the path of least resistance for scholarships, I would actually say let them play sports, but we need to focus on merit or focus on the need-based and really there are some, again, that are just private scholarships that have just kind of random criteria that have nothing to do with necessarily being a 4.0 student or being low income or being athletic. And so we want to make sure that we're aligning to those. But that said, there are athletic scholarships, and if your student is willing to go to, say, like a D2 school, maybe not one of the main schools, and play, then the chances of getting an athletic scholarship are certainly higher. Okay, then when is the best time to apply? The answer is now. If your student is in high school, you should start this process. Realistically, I would say everyone needs to be doing this by junior year in high school. So the reason I'm saying that is because first off, students in their junior year are actually eligible to apply to scholarships. Secondly, if you're doing this process now, you will already have a list built, experience under the belt. Your student will have essays written, materials collected by the time they get to senior year. This will make admissions so much easier, and they'll possibly have money already that they've secured they'll hold on to it until they actually head to college, but they'll know they have this money set aside. And then all that effort that you did junior year will make senior year so much easier. So if I could, I would say everyone needs to be doing this no later than junior year in high school. That said, it's also never too late. You and your student can be working on scholarships all throughout senior year in high school and college and beyond. So basically, they should be applying from junior year in high school all the way until they're leaving college. In fact, I cashed my last check on my way home from college graduation. It was $600, and it was just basically money at that point in my pocket. Now, we have an entire blog post with scholarships for students 14 years and younger, so I'll link to that in the description so you can check it out. Now, comment below, what grade level is your student in, and did you know that they can apply for scholarships, or are they applying for scholarships? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to see the majority of you and what year you're focusing on scholarships. Okay, so that said, when it comes to paying for college, scholarships are the best thing that you can possibly go for. But there are so many different types, so many different categories, which is good news for families. Because like I said, if your student is an average student like myself, like most of our families, then they need to get creative. They need to combine different types of scholarships. And that is fantastic because there's tons of them out there. So if you found this video helpful, make sure you hit subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and let us know what more you want to learn about scholarships in the comments, because we're always, again, every single week releasing a new video. So I'd love to see what you guys are missing out on. Lastly, don't forget all those amazing free resources that I mentioned. They're linked in the description. I'll see you in the next video.